Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. It's about all things spiritual and religious, and this video is the second one in a series about the religion of ancient Egypt. Today I'm going to tell you about what we can learn about this religion from inside of tombs and coffins of Egyptians beginning almost 5,000 years ago, about 3000 BC. You may have heard of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is the text that was found in tombs and coffins. It contains information about what to expect in the afterlife and spells of magical sayings to help the deceased person navigate that world. So this is the short history of the books of the dead. In the old kingdom of Egypt, back at the very beginning of recorded history, when the pyramids were being built, the pharaohs began to carve these sayings in the walls of their tombs, and they were known as the tomb texts. But only royalty and priests had access to these texts. Hidden inside these tombs, they were hidden there where the common people were not allowed to go. So during what's called the first intermediate period by scholars, that's a time when trouble and chaos erupted in Egypt. Tomb robbers entered the sacred tombs to steal the artifacts and the wealth from them. For the first time then, the tomb texts were read by commoners. And after that, these texts began to appear on coffins, both the outside and the inside of the coffin, and they were called the coffin texts. And these were the coffins of those who could not afford to have expensive tombs. Finally, when there was concern that not all of the spells, not all of the texts could be accommodated by a coffin, a small wooden box, probably 6 by 3 by maybe 2, then people began copying the texts onto papyrus. These papyri, making scrolls and placing them inside of the coffins. And these were the books of the dead. Translations of this you can find today, either in a book form you can purchase or in a PDF online. And they tell us much of what the ancient believers expected to find in the other world. Well, then we have grave goods. The pharaohs, the other royalty, and upper class citizens were buried with the things that they thought they would need in the next life. These included furniture, food, jewelry and clothing, toiletry articles, weapons, and tools. In fact, just about everything that is needed in this life, they presumed would be needed in the next life. It was like if a person is going on a trip, a long journey, and they're not sure exactly what they'll need, so they take everything with them. It appears that they saw the next life as being very similar to this life, only better. And all of these things were piled in various rooms in the tomb complex. Then you might find transportation. The deceased might have a boat to carry him across the river between the two lives. If he was a warrior, there could be a wheeled chariot, such as was used in battle. If the person liked music, there might be musical instruments. And of course, a person would need servants to help them. So we find small statuettes of servants, often many of them in one tomb. And they all represent the servants of the deceased who are going to serve their master in the next life. The tombs usually had several rooms, and then there was the actual burial chamber itself, containing the mummified body of the deceased person. Now, treatment of the body also tells us much about the ancient beliefs. It's believed that this body would be resurrected in the next world, so it would need to be complete, and it needed to be buried on Egyptian soil. This belief goes back to one of the ancient myths about the gods. Two of the gods were Isis and Osiris. They were brother and sister, and they were also husband and wife. They had an evil brother named Set. And Set murdered Osiris by trickery. He tricked him into getting into a coffin, then he covered it with molten metal and threw it into the Nile, where Osiris died. Well, long story, but eventually Isis recovers the body of her husband in Byblos and brings it back for burial in Egypt. Before this can be accomplished, Set hacks the body into pieces and scatters them over the Nile. Again, Isis reassembles the pieces, hovers over the body like a great bird, says magical spells, and Osiris is resurrected. From this myth, Osiris becomes god of the dead. The myth teaches that to be resurrected, an Egyptian must be buried at home, and the body must be complete. Well, interestingly, because of this belief, the ancient Egyptians never spread their territory. They never occupied other lands. They would go out into battle to neighboring nations, defeat their military, and plunder the land. But then the soldiers would return to Egypt with the wealth that they had taken. They didn't want to die on foreign land. The body itself was mummified, and I'll do another video on the details of this process. But as an overview, let me say that the process took about 70 days. Moisture is removed from the body, and it's wrapped in white cloths and placed in a coffin. The major organs are removed and put in canopic jars, except the heart, which is left inside the body. Egyptians believed that the heart functioned very much as we think the brain functions today. They removed the brain and they threw it away as unimportant. So all of this had to be accomplished with much ritual and reciting of spells and ceremonies to be sure that the person was properly prepared for burial. Now, one more source of information from the tombs and burial chambers are the walls. They are covered with stories of the person's life. So we learn much about the person buried there from these pictures. But in addition, they contain what the person will do in the once they're resurrected. And those are also carved and painted on the walls and sometimes the ceilings. And from this, we learn much about the everyday life of the Egyptian and what they think will happen after resurrection. But remember, peasants, laborers, farmers, slaves, none of them had the wealth for such elaborate tombs. So what we're finding out about, what we know about, is the life of the rich and powerful. Well, thanks for watching this part of a journey into another ancient religion. There's more coming. In the future, besides the mummification process, I want to talk about the role of priests in Egypt, a bit more about the individual gods and goddesses, who they were and what they stood for, and also one video about the heretic Pharaoh. And so I hope you'll join me for all of them. As always, I invite you to subscribe and leave your questions and comments for me. I do try to respond. I hope to see you next time. In the meantime, please stay safe and well, and I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.